Hey everyone, Reed here with Big Strong Book, here to do something a little different, harkening back to a couple videos I did last year about The Legend of Zelda. So recently I finished playing through The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, and I'd love to kind of share my thoughts on it. So for those of you who remember, last year, I think around November, I played through, or at least I finished Breath of the Wild. Had started it a long time ago, but then I played through the entirety of Ocarina of Time. Shared my thoughts on it. I really enjoyed both games. You know, it was hard to. I think Ocarina of Time was the better game, or at least the one I preferred more. But both are excellent. And then was kind of at a crossroads, at least in terms of the series, of what to play next. There was obviously Majora's Mask, which was on this. I had the Switch online services, and so there were options there, or at least Majora's Mask and a lot of the 2D games are on there. And then I had Tears. I own Tears of the Kingdom and Skyward Sword, the other two that have been released, or Skyward Sword is the HD remaster that was released on the Switch a few years ago, and then Tears of the Kingdom, the most recent mainline 3D game. And I initially, last November, after I played Ocarina of Time, I jumped into Tears of the Kingdom. And I think that was a mistake. Now, I say that was a mistake because I was playing it a few weeks fresh from Breath of the Wild. And Tears of the Kingdom is a sequel to Breath of the Wild, but I don't think I was prepared for, like, similar in so many facets. Sure, there are the main mechanics of the things you can. So, like in Breath of the Wild, you have you can create ice blocks. You can magnetize things, freeze time for objects, that sort of thing. And so Tears of the Kingdom has different components, but there's things that are similar to that. And then a similar way of, increasing your stamina vessels or your stamina wheel, increasing your heart containers through the shrine system. And I think that was just not what I was looking for at that time. TBD as to when I'll go back to Tears of the Kingdom. But Majora's Mask, once I had heard of the concept of it, that it is so much more than just, sure, it's a sequel to Ocarina of Time, but it is very much so its own thing. I mean, when I heard about the 3-day cycle concept and mechanic for this game, that's when I bought in. I'm like, I want to try that out because it seems both simultaneously stressful, fun, invigorating. I mean, it was that concept. You have 3 days to kind of do everything, and if you don't, you have to reset at the end of the 3 days to the beginning of the first day. And if there's something that you were in the middle of, you have to do it over again. I like the sense of urgency that alone had. So I was looking forward to really trying to dive into it, because within the game of Majora's Mask, it is set. Link gets transported to a different world, an alternate world called Termina, where the moon is the moon is coming down, and it will hit this world in 3 days. And what happens at first is Link. Link is essentially tasked saving this world of Termina within 3 days. But of course, you, on your ocarina, play the Song of Time to save and then go back to the beginning of the first day. The game saves if you've beaten a quest, it saves all those items. It tracks dungeon success, so you don't have to perpetually keep doing dungeons all again, although you can repeat them. And Majora's Mask is probably the number one Zelda game that has been just absolute. That and Breath of the Wild, I bet, on YouTube have been talked endlessly to death about all of the great and fascinating parts and pieces of this game. But one thing I want to talk about just from the onset here is to emphasize, certainly, just it's been stated again and again, but I don't think it can be stated enough. The impressive feat that it was to produce this game in what, less than 18 months, however long it was. I'm assuming from when Ocarina of Time shipped in late 1998 to, I think it was released in April of 2000 in Japan, later on in the year of 2000 for North America and Europe maybe too. But that's insane. Even though they reused the same asset, I mean, they could have just done essentially the same game over again. Tweaked some things, set it in Hyrule so you didn't have to, from a design standpoint so that it wouldn't be overwhelming for them. But they were like, no, they really were like, okay, we can use the same assets, but we can still make something that is completely different, completely its own thing. And they do, and it exceeds with flying colors in this game. This game is so frustrating. It is so I mean, every Zelda game I think can be called frustrating in a good way. It is so endlessly fascinating. I think in terms of what is left implicit within this game. I mean, you get a lot the side quests and the main thrust of this game. So how Link ends up in this world is he has his ocarina stolen from him. Epona's kind of taken away. He is turned into a Deku scrub, and he has to recover his ocarina. And then he meets the Happy Mask salesman, who's one of the creepiest characters I think I've encountered in a game in a good long while, who requests that you recover this Majora's Mask that this character, Skull Kid, has stolen from him. It's clear that Majora's Mask has very evil, the mask itself has very clearly evil capabilities. But one thing that you are told by the Skull Kid's fairy tale is to go to essentially the 4 compass points, to go to the north, east, south, and west, not in that order, but to go to the 4 points of the map, because in those there will be kind of giant spirits that you can awaken through the dungeons. And so, Majora's Mask, by necessity of its short development time, means that the core game itself, it still takes a while. Even though there are only 4 areas, 4 dungeons, aside from, Clock Town is itself a vast area just in terms of what there is to do there, and who there is to interact with. But this game is, you go one area to the other. You can't complete this game non-linear. In terms of the main dungeons, you have to do them in order. You get certain items in ones that then you need in others. So, which I am fine with. I'm fine with there were some points where I kind of wished that you had the freedom to kind of go wherever and do a la Breath of the Wild, or I assume Tears of the Kingdom, in that mode. But it's almost like that this game anticipates the current direction that Zelda seems to be going in terms of the lower amount of things to do in order to get through the story. Not as freewheeling as Breath of the Wild, but you only have 4 dungeons, and then you can do the side stuff. There are some side things that are required in some way to advance in the game. I think of things like the Goron brothers, the Romani Ranch stuff. Like, there's a lot of things that are in a respect required to get through the game. But then there are a lot of things that aren't, and a lot of things that you happen upon, because early in the game, you wake up when you reset that first day cycle, and you wake up in Clock Town. You have the Bomber's Notebook, and you can kind of go through it. And I love just the chance of, once I got the notebook, then just going around honestly and talking to like every single freaking person in that town to see if the entry pops up. And what's funny is I had heard of there's the famous side quest in the game, the Anju Cafe side quest, which is really the heart and soul of the story. It's what the game is all about. It ties in all the themes of the game, kind of in a very, I wouldn't say, maybe not a perfect way, but in a very good way. And I happened upon that quest, not even anticipating it. And I had heard that it's a complex quest, and you kind of have to do things. It uses the entire cycle right up until the end of it, right before the moon crashes on a Termina, and so I knew that, and but I was curious. I was like, okay, let's see how much of this I can do. Granted, this was after I think I had just completed the Woodfall Temple, the first temple in the game. And you can get to day 3, but then you're kind of limited. So I was like, okay, I'll come back to this, but now I have the knowledge, and that's part of what this game is. It's redoing areas with the knowledge of what you have to do in order to do them successfully. And there are wonderful things like, I mean, yes, the Romani Ranch quest are kind of, it's solemn in its own way. The Postman's quest is poor guy's just like Forrest Gump. He's out there, he's on a mission, you tell him to go and he goes, and the way that his quest ends up is just it's kind of funny, but it's in a very sweet way. But this game, dealing with obviously loss and grief, that's clear, and an impending doom, but then it is, what the characters choose to do with that grief. You get a lot of characters that are just almost aimlessly running around trying to build stuff up for the carnival. You have this big carnival. I mean, and you literally have people who don't know what to do in the mayor's office when you have kind of those warring parties that are like, no, we got to stay, we got to do the carnival because our town depends on this. Probably economically, the morale of the people in Clocktown. There are other people that say, no, we need to evacuate, even though it's like, what is the point of evacuating? Because it's a moon. Like, you're going to die. Even if you go to Romani Ranch, like some of them do in the game, you're going to die. You're going to die. And that's what is this game is not nihilistic, certainly, but the characters, a lot of the characters are. I mean, the characters are, but it's, you have to kind of you as Link have to bring the best out of them, which is what I liked. You go to the mayor when you eventually get the couple's mask, and he realizes, oh, somebody got married. Oh, that's nice. That reminds me of my family. Why are we bickering about this? Let's all be with our families. You get the thing like the Postman's quest, where you kind of almost set him free from this schedule that is so regimented. You help the sisters on the Romani Ranch kind of be able to go about their livelihoods, but even there's still a very sad undertone with those as well, that they have resigned themselves to their fate. And then of course there is there's the Anju Cafe subquest, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But then there's the theme of there are the themes of friendship, of the need to be valued, which is resonant in a very heartbreaking sense, I guess, with Skull Kid. And forgive me if I just ramble and kind of go off into spoilers, but that's kind of what I'll do for this. And I assume most watching have probably played the game already. I didn't realize until after finishing the game and kind of reading into things, reading more about the characters within this game, I forgot that Skull Kid, I forgot the lore of the Skull Kids, that they might be Kokiri, children who kind of are these lost spirits in the Lost Woods. But that Skull Kid, either the exact character that's in Majora's Mask, that's like the antagonist, or a Skull Kid, that they make an appearance in Ocarina of Time. And I hadn't thought about that. And then I thought, if the Skull Kid that shows up in Ocarina of Time is indeed supposed to be the same Skull Kid in Majora's Mask, my forgetting him entirely, really, that nails home the whole kind of the crux of Skull Kid and Majora's Mask, of this feeling of rejection and lashing out, but then it's the what that kind of lashing out, what that can do. You know, when we are bereft, or we are disheartened, or in this kind of like of this social agony of sorts, of feeling alone or kind of on an island, and it's almost like Skull Kid had the that kind of uh, sadness boiled over into a waylaying the happy mask salesman and stealing Majora's Mask. Or I mean, it's almost like Majora's Mask is almost like their answer to, or their commentary perhaps, or an allusion or an homage to the ring, the ring of the one ring to rule them all, where it takes over and it corrupts its user or its wearer. It brings out the worst aspects in their personality in order to fit this end of power, but power for power's sake. And it makes them into puppets. I mean, Majora's Mask turns Skull Kid into a puppet, and then as it goes up into the moon, and then it consumes the moon, and then the moon has that desire to just consume. And then that kind of leads into, okay, what is the happy mask salesman? What does that have to do with anything? I think this game does a lovely job at really kind of diving into those themes in a way that Ocarina of Time. I mean, Ocarina of Time was about. It was that hero's quest, and this is helping people. I mean, it's helping people. I mean, in a way, you could argue Ocarina of Time is about helping people. It's about helping everybody, but in this, it's about going out of your way to help others. Going out of your way to help others in the face of inevitable doom, in the value of connection in all things, which again, by being able to kind of follow these characters on literally on these cycles, whether it be in the Bomber's Notebook or whatnot, and helping these areas kind of flourish again, even though almost like in a sad, ironic way, when you reset the clock, those areas reset. So did you make an impact at all in the end? Or was this just in the end for Link's edification? Or is it about building up the player so that they take these philosophies outside of the game? That when games kind of reach that almost, I don't want to say, I mean, transcendence is probably like an overblown expression, but when games reach that kind of intention, or in an intentionality in the design, that it affects you as the player, and that you're able to kind of really take away from it, and it does impact you, and it makes you think. Well, of course, when you think back to it, when you play these games again, and of course, there's a lot of replayability within Majora's Mask, especially for me. Like I'll just say I did not complete all of the side quests in the Bomber's Notebook. I think I probably completed half or a little over half. I made it my mission, though. The last thing I did before, you kind of go up the clock tower for that final confrontation before you go to the moon, is I wanted to complete the Anju Cafe subquest, and that was, I mean, it's lovely. You help to reunite them, and even if he stays a kid or child-sized forever, it doesn't matter, because they're Cafe, he overcomes. But it is interesting having that, because he has that need to have that sun mask, whether it's part of just a wedding ceremony, but it's not that. Cafe at any time, I think, he could have found Anju, but it's that he needed to find that for himself, to make things right in all aspects, not just seeing her again, because they aren't reunited completely, of course, until until the end, until 4:30 a.m., an hour and a half before the moon crashes. One thing I did notice before I even started the quest in the first place was that by that laundry room area, or that laundry building area in Clocktown, that Anju comes to sit on that bench because she knows he's in there. And that was something that it's not really a part of her. I think you can maybe interact with her in a meaningful way during that time if you have the cafe mask on. I'm not sure though. But it's a nice little moment of just like, as part of her schedule, she just goes and sits on that bench, probably knowing that he's in there. But that kind of longing that is expressed without words is something that's great. So I think and then getting more into the gameplay, obviously, with how the Switch Online service works, in that you can save the game through the emulation itself, but then there's also suspend points. So you can create 4 suspend points. So you can save the game in the middle of a boss fight. And then if you die, you can just resume from the middle. So I wouldn't say it's not cheating. It's just a method that exists within the Switch service, and so I'm kind of just using it. So I would save in a boss fight, and if I died, I could just come back to it, it came in handy in dungeons, especially in like something like the Great Bay Temple, and I will admit I did consult walkthroughs on Zelda Dungeon, because I think, and the reason why I did so, perhaps in this, maybe even more than I did in Ocarina of Time, I don't even know, it felt like more, even though it might not have been, is because of the running clock. I just did not want to waste any time. So when you're spending a lot of time in a room in the dungeon and you're like, I don't know what to do in here, and time is money in this game for real, and the more time that you spend, the less time you have to eat. Like, you are on the clock. Even if you use the inverted Song of Time, you are on the clock, even if that clock is like 2.5 hours to complete a dungeon. So that, the suspend points that are set up from the Switch Online service, it helps you out in a big way. I will say that. And then I think beyond all of that, with the gameplay, it has that kind of that inherent jank that Nintendo 64 games could have when you have just the one directional stick, when you don't have two. That's just more like the limitation of the time. Maybe not the limitation of the time, but I even think back to games like Metal Gear Solid. Granted, that was a PlayStation game, which had the two analog sticks, but it's still kind of a top-down game. This was this was kind of almost the last gasp of that kind of an era, because this came out in the year 2000, around the time that the PS2 launched, when we kind of had that wave coming on of, Xbox was not too far behind, and then Nintendo would kind of rework things for the GameCube. So this was a game that came out kind of towards the end of the lifespan of the N64. It has that inherent jank to it with some of the controls. You're moving Link forward, and then he accidentally jumps when you don't mean him to jump, or there are little things like that. It's very minor criticism. It's more, again, just the limitations of the technology and that controller, with what you could do in the game. And for its limitations, it does amazingly well. So that may be the only thing and some things with the Z targeting. I like the Z targeting. It was, of course, ahead of it. It set the tone for what that kind of a thing would look like in future games. But sometimes it left a lot to be desired. Especially in the final boss fight. Granted, that was more just the difficulty of that boss fight, of trying to shoot Majora in the back with light arrows, not being able to do so. But yeah, Majora's Mask it's it's such a great game. That is able to complement things like Ocarina of Time while standing completely on its own, while being able to fundamentally, I think, change the player to really have these themes and messages that it's not, it's not fables, it's not these kind of morals of the story. It's just these human touches and human moments that really exist and permeate in it in a way that I don't wasn't present necessarily to as much of a degree in Ocarina of Time. And I would argue the same thing for Breath of the Wild. So does that mean that this is the best of the 3 Zelda games that I've played? I don't know. I still think in terms of just the absolute solid from beginning to end hero's quest story, that goes to Ocarina of Time. Ocarina of Time is probably still my number 1. Majora's Mask, from the way I've been describing it, is probably a number 2. Breath of the Wild, probably a number 3. But it's tough. I mean, it's a testament, I think, to the team that is behind these Zelda games, that they are just able to innovate and to churn out these great successes one after the other, where you can kind of look at all of them and you're like, it's so hard to rank and to pick your favorite, because they all have great elements within them. So I'm looking forward to figuring out what I want to play next in the series. I might dabble in some of the 2D games. Obviously, there's A Link to the Past, which is the arguably the hallmark of the series, right next to Ocarina of Time. They're the Oracle of Ages and Seasons games. There's Echoes of Wisdom, which I picked up recently but haven't given a shot. And there's the other 3D games. I think next I will probably return to Tears of the Kingdom and just pick up where I left off. Like, I literally got out of the starting area, like onto the mainland, did some stuff in that first town that you come across, did a few of the shrines on the ground, but that's it. That's all I've done in Tears of the Kingdom. So it's very much so in the early beginning of the game. But I might reapproach it and be open-minded about it. And I think maybe those first impressions of, oh man, this might just be too similar to Breath of the Wild for me. If those first impressions, they may not be what is the lasting impression of the game. So Tears of the Kingdom, maybe for me, it didn't get off on the best foot, and it probably was an error on my part of starting that game really soon after completing Breath of the Wild. So we'll see. And now knowing that, okay, this is going to be, in a good way, maybe more of the same. I know that now and can approach it with perhaps a better mindset. But then there's also Skyward Sword. I don't know. And then there's Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. I don't have a means of playing those games right now, but that's an option for the future too. So we shall see. Majora's Mask, again, a great entry in the series, and looking forward to kind of just keeping the Zelda train rolling and diving into the other entries. So if you have played Majora's Mask, let me know what you think. And as always, I will see you guys next time.